There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, if you want.
1, 2, 3, set, go.
Hello and welcome to the Power Chord Hour podcast, episode 8. I'm your host, Anthony Merchant. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. And I'm very excited. We have our second guest since the podcast has started up. And this guy, I was so excited to talk to him. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a buddy about Drive Thru Records releases, and we were talking about our top 5 favorites. And one of them that popped up in my head, and I didn't even think about it beforehand. I mean, I've always loved the record, but it's just one of those things where, including for Drive Thru Records, like if you ask me my top 5 favorite releases, it's going to change all the time because it's just so hard. But I was thinking about my favorites, and Hidden in Plain View's Life and Dreaming, one of my all-time favorites. I mean, in my top 5, and probably consistently too, that might be one that wouldn't change much. Like, even though some of them would change, that's one that I could probably confidently say, no, that's always in my top 5. And, after we were talking about it, I started thinking about it. I'm like, wow, that record turns 15 this year. So I hit up frontman Joe Reo of Hidden in Plain View, saw if he wanted to talk about 15 years of Life and Dreaming. And thankfully he did, and I was very, very excited. And, I mean, what came out was amazing. I love getting in. My favorite thing about doing this is being able to interview people that I love and the music that I love. And really just, I like to dissect and hear everything about it. I like to hear how an album was recorded. I like to hear how long it took, some of the gear they used. Was it a stressful recording session? What was it like? Music's one of those interesting things because, the thing with music is there's people out there who can make millions and millions of dollars at it, and there's other people who will do it for decades just for the fun of it as a hobby. It's one of those things. So you always get a different story, and it's the same with studios. Our last guest, Stephen Bradley or Steve Kravick. He being a producer and an engineer for all these years, he was talking about Blink-182 recording Cheshire Cat and him being the engineer, and then working on 17 songs in, I believe it was a weekend. So it's you get things like that where you go, a band has a shoestring budget, it's stressful, they really, they're trying to put out too many songs with not enough time. And there's other ones, there's other bands, even Blink-182, where you look at their self-titled record, that one I think took over a year to record. Who knows what the budget was for it, something like that where they had time to record. They had a whole house they recorded in. There's a whole thing about it where it's I think they had a massive budget for that. So you just never know. So I'm always interested to hear how an album kind of came about. And normally it's, within stories about what happened in the studio. So I always loved doing that, So this was really fun to get into it, really dissect the album, how it was written. And, the beginnings of Hidden in Plain View, what they're up to next, which I got to say, if you're a fan, which I assume you are if you're listening to this right now, really, really good news. I think you're going to be very excited when you listen to this. But, also if you're a fan, I'm sure this goes without saying. Life and Dreaming, I think, is most people's favorite Hidden in Plain View release. There's just something about it. That record, I feel like we kind of touched on it in this interview, but at the same time, it's just hard. It's there's certain things that make a record so magic that it's I don't really think you can place your finger on what it is. We try to talk about it a little on here, but, I think a great record is a great record. And, some of the stuff you can credit to certain things, and there's others where it's just kind of time and place, and it's what came out, and, what came out happened to be really good. And, that's kind of what happened, I would say, with Life and Dreaming. Just an amazing record, very special record. And it's funny, I did mention that I saw Hidden in Plain View at Skate and Surf, but I forgot to tell Joe. It's kind of funny. I actually skipped my college graduation to go see Hidden in Plain View in New Jersey. I skipped my community college graduation, I guess, to be fair. I did graduate again 2 years later and went to that one. But for my first graduation, I blew it off because Midtown was reuniting and Hidden in Plain View was playing Skate and Surf. And at that point, I think Hidden in Plain View maybe played a handful of shows. The year before, they put Life and Dreaming out on vinyl for the first time. And then after that, they got a little more active and were playing some one-off shows and stuff. So, I caught them one of their first shows back in 2014 when they did Skate and Surf. And, just absolutely amazing. They stole the show. Them in Midtown, well worth skipping my graduation for. I'll tell you that. If you're ever wondering, you go, Anthony, is it worth, should I skip my graduation to go see Midtown and Hidden in Plain View? I'm going to tell you yes. I'm going to say that's a good idea, and I fully back it. So the next time Skate and Surf gets revived and Hidden in Plain View and Midtown play that, I would say skip your graduation or whatever else you need to skip, because it's well worth seeing them. But I don't know. I thought that was funny, driving 8 hours to go see them in Asbury Park, and it was well worth it. That was a great weekend. And, it's funny because I also talked to him about it. I didn't hear Life and Dreaming, even though it came out in 2005. I didn't jump on board until 2012 was when I first heard it. So, it was like years later, but it's funny, on a record like that, because I feel like a lot of people listening to this, maybe you heard it when it first came out, and it's like I get just as nostalgic, but it's like 5 years later, 5 or 10 years later, where you start going like, oh yeah, I was in college and this album did this and that. But it's like, instead of it, doing it for me in like 2005, it did it for me in 2012. But I also think that also is a testament to really good music. I think Drive Thru Records as a whole, because I did that with so many bands. There's so many bands now that are celebrating records that came out 15 or 20 years ago, where I discovered them in like 2011, 2012 when I was in college, and I was like 18 or 19, but, just like the people who originally discovered them were, but, 5-10 years later. And, I think that attributes to just timeless music, just really, really good music. And also that's one of the good things about the internet, that you can go back and discover these great things later on. And, my hope, if you're listening to this, hopefully you're a Hidden in Plain View fan. But my other hope, the other side of that is hopefully you don't know who the hell Hidden in Plain View are. You listen to this interview, you get really stoked on it, and you like the songs I play. And, you've been converted into a Hidden in Plain View fan, and you just found new music that's new to you that, is 15 years old. So, that's also something that's really gratifying to me. So hopefully we have both, either way, no matter if you're new to the band, you've been listening for 15 years. I hope you enjoy my interview with Joe Reo as much as I enjoyed doing it. So here's my interview with him, talking 15 years of life and dreaming right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. Right now on the Power Chord Hour, we are talking to Hidden in Plain View frontman Joe Reo. And the band released their fan-favorite record, Life and Dreaming, 15 years ago in February of 2005 on Drive Thru Records. To this day, one of my favorite Drive Thru releases. And to really celebrate the anniversary, we're going to talk all about that landmark record with Joe. So, Joe, how are you doing, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
No, I'm very stoked on this. Like I said, one of my favorite Drive Thru releases, ever. Just a really great record. Crazy to believe it's 15 years old now. And when you guys put it out, I know it was the band's first full length, but at that point you did have a few EPs out. So, how far into the band were you guys when you started writing the full length? Like, how many years had you been a band at that point?
That's a great question. So I guess we really kind of formed the band in 2000. And, right from there, let me think, we were writing songs, but, it was really DIY. We were a couple of friends, besides Bob and I, who'd known each other from high school. We were a couple of friends just from around the North Jersey, punk scene and pop punk scene. A lot of just going to a lot of local shows. And we just started writing songs and playing shows right away, trying to get better and have fun. We put out, so it's funny because Life and Dreaming has some songs on it that we wrote within the first year or two of even just existing. So like,
oh really?
Life and Dreaming. It just was like a culmination of songs ever since 2001, 2002. Like American Classic, that song is one of the first songs we ever wrote. That was on one of our early EPs that we like funded ourselves and recorded. I don't know, what year that was, or quite early on. We were pretty green back then.
So when it came to Life and Dreaming, you guys obviously put that out on Drive Thru Records. How did that signing end up happening? How'd you guys end up hooking up with Drive Thru?
Yeah, and it all kind of is the same story. Because we were really involved in the local scene in New Jersey, we were getting to know bands. A couple of the bands that we were getting to know was a band called Sunday Drive, which ended up becoming the Starting Line. A band called the June Spirit, which had Ace from Early November in it at first, and when these kind of broke off to start the Early November. So we had kind of met Richard and Stephanie from Drive Thru just through like mutual friends of bands we were playing with. I mean, these bands like we had known, you know, and including like Buddy and Census Fail, they were even closer to us. They were from North Jersey like we were. You know, so we met Richard and Stephanie through all of them. And I mean, just kind of trading shows and, hey, you know, we're on this show. We can get you guys on it. Do you guys have any shows in South Jersey? And yeah, we can get you on this show. And, you know, that was just kind of how it worked back then. And you just kind of knew who you knew, right? So, I mean, if it wasn't Richard, if it wasn't those bands, it would have probably had just been maybe someone else from another label. Like, oh, we know this person. They're putting out our album, so we'll introduce you to them too. And that was kind of the way it was back then. It was pretty freaking cool, actually, when you think about it.
You know, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've talked with other people before who were like in bands during that era, but you kind of bring up a good thing that like you forget how important it seems like the New Jersey scene was like in the early 2000s. Like how many of you guys were basically like the Drive Thru Records roster? Like so many bands came from New Jersey, or at least had members of, you know, those really early bands who went on and did like other things. And I often forget that, but I mean, it's insane, really. I mean, I feel like I wasn't around for that era. I mean, I kind of missed all that. I found all you guys like, I mean, I'm 27 and, you know, I kind of missed that era. But like when you look back, it really does seem like you had a very strong scene like in New Jersey, like kind of like late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, did that kind of feel special, the scene you had there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely did. You know, and I I love it when people ask me about it because, you know, the people that were there for it know what I'm talking about. But I mean, it wasn't just like the drive-through bands were a big deal, but I mean, there were other bands too. Like, I mean, there was the Saves the Days and there was the Thursdays and like My Chemical Romance, and these were like bands that they were acquaintances of ours too. I mean, and if not acquaintances, guys like we looked up to, you know, like, oh, they played bigger shows or better shows, or, you know, they had friends that were putting on shows that we were just trying to like, you know, show up on their radar, you know, just like, hey, notice us. We like them. We're trying to be like them. Or like, you know, we want to play shows with you guys too. New Jersey was, I mean, and the thing was, like, I try to explain to people, like, we would play a show on a Friday, and there would be, like, it would be, I don't know, in Wayne or in, like, Bound Brook or some town, and then, like, there would be another show in, like, Rutherford, and, you know, and not too far away, and you'd be competing with each other, and, I mean, there was just always a show. There was always a place to go. There was always someone to go see every single weekend, and if not, and plenty of them coming through. And I mean, there were, you know, people that maybe weren't in bands that were just taking it upon themselves to throw the shows, to just rent the halls and the PA system and put 8 bands on a bill and just say, hey, we're having a show and it's $5 at the door. So it was incredible time to learn and just be young and have fun.
Yeah,
so with Life and Dreaming, I mean, just I guess bringing it back, it was, you know, the songs that we were writing, we just wanted them to be better because we wanted to get on shows, because we wanted to be noticed, we wanted to be seen. So we just kind of went back to practice and like just tried to write better songs. And so it all culminated into just about 15 tracks that we went and tracked for Drive Thru that became Life and Dreaming. I mean, if you heard the first version of 20 Below, you'd laugh.
Really?
Yeah, you'd laugh at it. And that song changed like 2 times.
You know, that's kind of cool then. I mean, would you then kind of credit, I mean, I think Life and Dreaming, just those songs are so strong and so solid, and that kind of makes sense because now, like you're saying, like with American Classic, like you said, I mean, you wrote that so early on. You had all this time to, you know, basically kind of perfect it. I mean, I feel like that is part of like the strength of that record then, you know, like you guys got to kind of play with the songs, modify them, you know. I mean, I guess of all the songs, like maybe what is there like a song that maybe like early on you wrote that maybe changed the most drastically once it made it to Life and Dreaming, you know, after you had a few years of kind of toying with it?
I definitely the two I already mentioned. I mean, like you can go back, you can go on Spotify. We recorded an EP called Operation Cutthroat. I mean, I'm proud of it because of what we were doing at the time, and with being as kind of inexperienced as we were at the time for how that came out. But it didn't age well, But if you listen to the American classic that's on there, it's just so boppy and so like kind of, I don't know. I hate to sound like I'm trashing our own song, but it just was a little cheesy. And it's funny when you say like we were crafting it. Like I can remember being in practice and just Rob would have been like, let's just try this open chord instead of chugging or whatever it was. And it was like it opened up the song. And American Classic is still to this day one of my favorite songs on that album. I just love it. And it's funny because it is like 20 years old, but I mean it was birthed like 20 years ago.
Wow.
20 Below is definitely one of them, but then there were some new songs. Like when we flew out to California to record Life and Dreaming, we had some songs that were just kind of like in the work of progress, and we ended up writing it the week before we tracked in pre-production with Jim Wirt, and one of them was Garden Statement.
Really?
And yeah. That song came together at the very, very end. Like, and we just knew it was like when it did come together, we knew it was awesome. But, yeah.
That one surprises me just because because I feel like there's so many elements to that song. That's one that I would feel like would have been one that like, oh yeah, we worked on that. It's really funny because that's one where I would think that was one that you toyed with for a few years. I just feel like there's different elements to it, and like there's just, I mean, sonically, just it goes all those different places, and the bridge and everything. That's really neat to me that it kind of came together, that song, just like that for you. That's really cool.
Well, I mean, like, so because we recorded those EPs so much, I mean, like those EPs were great for teaching us how to be in a studio and track songs in the studio. We learned a lot from those, and taking that, to fly across the country with a producer like Jim Wirt, who to this day, I just adore the man. He was such a great guy to work with, and so laid back, but also so kind of like just professional when knew what he was talking about. But we were so pumped up for the experience that there was just like, it took us to a different level. So if you can imagine like just a bunch of young guys who all, just so pumped up to be doing what they're doing at the time, like we did want to like continue to be creative, and we were just in that zone. So when we were we booked this like the first week was like practice space in Santa Monica. It was a little further out, but and just we would sit with Jim for all day long and just practice our songs and play our songs, and he would just listen and be like, yeah, that sounds good, let's play that verse twice, or let's play the chorus one more time. And we kind of went through all the other songs so quick that it was like we had some time, and totally wrote Garden Statement in that little practice space studio, like right across the street from a 7-Eleven. I'll never forget.
That's amazing. That's probably my favorite song of your guys. That or American Classic, but that really does blow my mind just because of them. There's just something about that song that I wouldn't think that one came together as quickly. So I mean, that's really cool. And kind of going back, so you guys signed to Drive Thru, you put out Life and Dreaming, but before that, you did put out that self-titled EP. I mean, like, how soon after you put out that EP was it like, all right, time to put out a full length? Like, did you guys kind of just tore off that for a while, or is it basically kind of like, all right, EP's out, time to do a full length?
It really was kind of quick. I can't remember exactly why. I mean, we did that EP pretty quick. We did that at Portrait Studios in New Jersey. In fact, Spencer wasn't even in the band when we recorded that yet. So the drums on that record aren't Spencer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you can hear it if you go back and listen to it. Like that, they just don't rip nearly as hard as Spencer's drums can rip.
He is a good drummer.
Yeah, he is. He's probably, and I say this humbly, but the best drummer I've ever seen. let alone had to be in a band with. I love that guy. Anyway, yeah, so I mean, like we recorded that and we went right on tour and then never kind of stopped touring. And so when it came time to doing the full length, we had songs already. We were basically already in the position to go record a full length, but for some reason or another, Drive Thru kind of pushed it back, and then we missed a deadline for one thing or another, and then we had the whole Life and Dreaming tracked, and it was supposed to come out in 2004, in like November of 2004, and they decided just like, let's push it back to February. In fact, we're going to put it back. We're going to put it out on 2/22, and we're like, okay, that stinks. And it kind of stunk because like even though it was only November to February, like those extra couple of months, we really wanted it. I remember us really wanting it out before we went on the 2004 Warped Tour. We went on that 2004 Warped Tour and basically played Life and Dreaming live, and nobody had it yet, or even knew it was coming out.
Yeah, I would think they would want that too. As far as the label goes, I would think you would want the full length out for Warped Tour. I mean, that seems like prime time, to like promote something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly why. I mean, it was a busy time. It was a busy time for Drive Thru. If you could think back to 2004 and the releases that they had then. Oh,
that's like peak Drive. I mean, you're basically like in the middle of their like. I feel like their like heyday there.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So I mean, I don't know if it was internal on their part. I don't know if it was something we dropped the ball on, because somebody calls up, says, hey, guys, we need this, and guys in bands are guys in bands. Okay, yeah, we'll get to that. And then it's like Friday and it's 5 days have passed and you finally get back to that thing, and it's just guys in bands, dudes in bands are just slow. If you say I'll get it to you tomorrow in their brain is like Friday. So I don't know if it was our fault or a combination of what, but yeah, things did get pushed back, but we were ready for that EP. I mean, hindsight, it didn't matter. The only thing I think that kind of stunk was that we just toured on that EP for a long time, and Life and Dreaming was just it was packed full of songs that would have been great to get out. I think like half a year, 6 months earlier. And in my opinion,
I mean, you kind of talked about it a little already. But I mean, for Life and Dreaming, was that like really the first time you guys like worked with like a producer, and I assume had like a nice amount of like studio time, like yeah, not like rushing so much and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the EP, I mean, we would take passes on certain things on the EP and just like, yeah, that works, keep it, let's move on. And especially like the drums or some of the guitars. So no, the Life and Dreaming was like, that was the way records are made. In a matter of fact, like I can remember the first time we got to 4th Street Recording Studios. Jim was so proud of that studio. It was so tiny. It's such a small place, but it was right on 4th Street. If you've ever been to Santa Monica, California, there's the promenade on 3rd Street, and right behind it's 4th Street, and that's where the studio is located. And the board, he was talking about just how the board that was used in that studio was used on Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds.
Oh, nice.
And so like the first thing we did was put on Pet Sounds and listen to Pet Sounds through in a control room. And I was like, okay, this is fun. I'm in Santa Monica and we're geeking out and we're listening and we're talking about music. And then he let us put on like an album. If you guys wanted it to sound like one album, what would you want it to sound like? And that's my best Jim impression, but so I remember like opening up my big book of like 500 CDs, and we pulled out like The Color and the Shape. We're like, let's put this one on, like, so we put on Foo Fighters. Like we wanted to sound big and chunky and huge like that. All right, far out. All right, it's cool. That's cool. And then, so, I mean, for a bunch of young guys signed on Drive Thru Records, it was already quite big for us. And to be there, it was really surreal, really cool. But no, it was definitely the way a record should be made. Definitely, in my opinion.
It's funny that you bring up the Foo Fighters, because American Classic to me has always hit me like there was like this Foo Fighters influence to it, which now I'm assuming they're kind of it, you know, like they were at least some kind of influence on that record. Because that song, for some reason, always kind of reminded me in some way of like kind of a Foo Fighters song for whatever reason. So it's funny you bring them up. But
yeah, we were definitely influenced by them. Definitely.
So I mean,
especially that album.
That's a great record too. I'd say it's probably like my favorite Foo Fighters record. You know, so overall for the recording of Life and Dreaming, then was that pretty laid back then, like a pretty nice, easy process? I mean, it sounds like you went in and it's like you kind of musically you had songs written and everything. It doesn't sound like you were like rushing to get everything done and whatnot. It sounds like it was kind of nice and probably fair. I mean, as laid back as recording an album can be, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, we had deadlines, and I remember at the end, we kind of missed some. So, like for example, there were just moments where it was like, it makes sense to do this. Oh, but we're falling behind now. We're only allowed, you know, Jim was not only hired to produce, but he was hired to mix Life and Dreaming, and we allowed ourselves like I think 6 or 7 days at first to mix the whole thing. Now that's not a lot of time when you're talking that many tracks. So we already knew we weren't allowing ourselves a lot of time to mix. And then as we were going, and we were like, we wanted to add strings in on the Innocent ones, and Andrew McMahon was hanging around, and Jim was doing his Jack's records at the time, Jack's Mannequin records at the time. And he's like, hey, Andrew, why don't you put some piano on this song? And so as we were doing and getting creative and doing stuff like that, we kind of ran out of some time. And then Jim only ended up having like 4 days to mix, and he did a great job on it, but he didn't have enough time. And so that was another thing, actually, now that I'm talking about it, that's one of the reasons why it did push back a little bit at first, was because we had to get it remixed, and we got it remixed in New York City. Rob and I went to New York City and just with another guy, Josh Wilbur, and we had it remixed, which was great because Josh did a fantastic freaking job on that mix. He did.
So I mean,
brought it to life.
So I mean, like once the record was out and you guys started touring, you know, who are some of the bands that you toured with during that era?
Oh man, that's a blur. Because we were touring, like the only thing we stopped touring to do was to like record Life and Dreaming. We were always touring, so I can't remember where and what. But what did we do? So I think one tour we did with Life and Dreaming out was we did Less Than Jake and Alistair. That was a good tour. I'm pretty positive the Midtown and Matchbook Romance tour was with that. We did an incredible tour with Something Corporate, Straight Run, The Academy Is. That was a really fun tour. And I'm putting this all in or around either after the album came out or right before it dropped. The headlining tour we did on that album was a co-headliner actually with The Academy Is. And Over It was on it. Punchline was on it. At different times, there were different bands that were on it, but it's a really fun time. It's good friends and good bands. It was exciting.
Those are all very good, including Punchline and Over It. Those are all some really good ones.
Oh yeah.
You know, for like recording on Life and Dreaming, did you guys end up with like any songs that didn't make it on the record?
There's 2 B-sides to that record. Yeah, there are 2.
Only 2 though? There's just 2 B-sides?
That was it. Yep. The only 2 that didn't make it on. And one of them, it was even older than American Classic when you think about when we first wrote it.
Oh, really?
It was called To Your Grave, and yeah, and that one I thought it is a great song. I mean, both songs that didn't make it on Life and Dreaming belonged on Life and Dreaming. They're awesome. I love them. But they're B-sides. I don't know where you can even find them. I think there was like a Japanese release of Life and Dreaming that had them both on it. I think there was what was like a 7-inch single for Ashes Ashes, and the other side had one of the B-sides on it. But yeah, So
Nice.
the one was called To Your Grave, and the other one was called Hot and Sexy.
Oh, not, you know what? Now that I think of it, I have heard Hot and Sexy. I have heard that. It's a
Okay,
good song. I totally forgot that was a B-side for that record.
it was.
But, like, I want to ask you, because I kind of feel like you guys were almost at like the tail end of it, but, Drive Thru did a lot of them, and I mean, just all labels really did, but, there was that era where compilations could, I feel like, do a lot for bands and like really expose them to, different people. Like, do you feel like Hidden in Plain View got much exposures from like comps? Because like I feel like you guys were almost like on that like tail end of it, where either you maybe like saw, no, not really.
I don't think we really benefited from the comps. No, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because I had some of those comps were like, I still go back to them these days, like the Drive Thru ones for sure, but some of the Vagrant comps, like
Life on the Streets.
yeah, man, oh my god, that is one of the best. Or Another Year on the Streets.
Or Another
both
Year
of
on the
them.
Streets. So good.
Yeah.
So good. That
But no, I think we did. I think that there was one or two that was getting passed around on Warped Tour that I was really, really excited to be on. I mean, because I saw our name alongside, like, Newfound Glories and Finches and Something Corporate, and that was exciting for me. Like, but there was one that we didn't make it on, and I remember being bitter about it. I remember really wanting to be on it, and I don't know what it was. If it was like we were getting signed, but we hadn't signed yet, and it wasn't finalized, and we missed the boat on it, and I was bummed. I remember that. Yeah, because
like I love
comps
comps,
were
like, aren't they? They're the best.
yeah, it's a good point. It's a good question.
I probably even discovered you. I mean, I found Hidden in Plain View probably like 2012, 2013, and off a comp, I'm pretty sure. Like I to this day, I tell people it's still a great way to discover old music, and it's sad that it doesn't. I kind of get, like with the internet and everything, I kind of get that comps probably don't do what they once did, but it still bums me out that labels really don't release them like that, because there really was an era where I really feel like that could do something for a band.
Yeah. No, and it's been replaced by is like, the Pandora radio station. You can instead just put in your favorite band's name and get a million different suggestions of bands you've never heard. Or, I mean, that's the way I think people get turned on to new music or even old music. Like something pops up that you never heard before, and now you have someone who's into like I don't know, Joy Division or like New Order, and they never knew those bands were good,
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I do think that's basically the replacement for like, the compilation.
Yeah.
But, like what I wanted to ask, I think one of the strongest things about Life and Dreaming, and I would really just say Hidden in Plain View in general, is I feel like you guys really balance kind of genres and influences. Like I listen to Life and Dreaming, and I mean, there's parts of it where I think there's kind of a pop punk element, but I don't think I would call it a pop punk record. There's parts of it where I guess, people use terms like emo or screamo. And sure, I mean, there's parts of that, but I really don't feel like you can pinpoint like one genre on that record. And I mean, like, was that ever an intentional thing to kind of have a unique sound? Or is that, I mean, just a natural thing where it's like, that's just kind of how you guys sounded when you played together?
I think that's like one of the nicest compliments that we ever hear is when people tell us things like that. No, because that's exactly what we were going for. We always saw ourselves in that scene because those were the shows we went to. Those were the bands we hung out with and listened to mostly. But no, like I said earlier, we liked bands like the Foo Fighters, and there were things we wanted to do, and we knew that that was going to kind of hurt us, and I think it kind of did. I don't think it actually served as good of a purpose as we had hoped it would. We were playing in a scene where people were, at the time, kids wanted to hear screamo, and kids wanted to hear, songs like Census Fail, where we're screaming about how horrible life is, and death, and blood, and tearing your heart out, and what I mean, like,
yeah.
I don't know, but we did it, but we didn't all the way do it, and then we would have a song like The Innocent Ones, which was very much just kind of like a ballad. that would grow and to a climax and then break. And you know, we always just tried to be very dynamic in the way we were listening to songs and writing songs and playing songs. We just wanted them to kind of take people on a trip, and we never really wanted to sound like one thing. But then again, like, we were influenced by bands like heavily at the time. We were influenced by like At the Drive-In, The Refused. We were really influenced by Jimmy Eat World. We were really influenced by the Foo Fighters, the Beatles, like big band that you'd hear in the van on a road trip. Like, so huge compliment. Thank you for noticing that. I didn't necessarily think that that kind of presented itself clearly to a lot of people, but to hear you say that really makes me happy. So thanks.
No, and it's funny you mentioned Jimmy Eat World, because I was talking about the record to someone recently, and I was like, I think part of the things I like about Life and Dreaming is the same thing that I like about Clarity, is that same thing. I don't feel like you can pinpoint a genre on it. You can go, this song sounds like this, or this is kind of like this, but it's not a record that, like, leans into something too far. So, I mean, that's another one where I thought, same with Foo Fighters, I'm like, okay, there has to be some Jimmy Eat World then in there. So then that's cool to
Definitely.
hear you were influenced by them. So then, your favorite song off Life and Dreaming, if you had to pick one, what would be your absolute favorite from that record?
Oh man. And, it's hard because like you just said, they're different. So some songs give you something completely different than others.
Maybe a better way to phrase it, how about live? Is there a song on there that's like most fun live, maybe gets like the best reaction from the crowd?
I mean, I think Garden Statement, I think you just have to take that completely out the equation. Like,
yeah, it's not fair.
Like that song, it's just from lyrically where it was written. Lyrics were written by Rob, but both, the influence behind the lyrics are completely felt by both he and I. And I'm not going to tell you what the song was about, because that's for him to tell you. But I don't ever like to speak for his lyrics. So that meant a lot to me, just the meaning behind the song, then the intensity behind the song, and just like, again, where it goes from just kind of frantic to catchy to, just like, where that song takes a listener is just very special to me. So I will take that one completely out of this question. And I would probably say Ashes.
Ooh, that's very energetic. I could see that, a fun live one.
Yeah, it never comes off to me as that good live, but I think it's probably because I'm just kind of shaking my head and going kind of nuts during that song. It's like, I don't know how clear my vocals are coming out when I'm half out of breath and like trying to reach for a big note. I don't know. So probably Ashes. I would probably Bleed for You. 20 Below is always really fun to play live. I really love to play that song live. But I think if I had to say one, it would be the Ashes.
Nice. And
yeah.
For everything that the band's released, I mean, do you feel like Life and Dreaming is like the best representation of Hidden in Plain View? Do you think like for what the band was going for, that was it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Resolution was a completely different thing. And there were moments on Resolution where we nailed it, and there are moments on Resolution that everybody in the band will tell you that we just wish didn't happen.
Really?
Oh yeah, Resolution is. It was a completely different time in the bands. I don't want to make the interview about that, but it was like we were spent. We had been on the road way too long. We got pushed back to get. We were ready to get in the studio on that one for a long time, and couldn't get in for reasons that weren't our fault. And then when we finally did, it was weird. Like, Life and Dreaming had this kind of special thing to it. You couldn't put your finger on it, but Life and Dreaming really just was special to us and to other people. And there was a big pressure to top that. And I know people in bands know exactly what I'm talking about. That that sophomore album, that, or even like the third or fourth album, there's just an unwritten pressure there where people have to do something, try a little harder. And there were moments where we didn't know how to balance that. And we were all pulling influences from different places, and we just weren't agreeing on things. And like, so there were moments where we missed on resolution. And there were moments where it hit, but I can tell you, that taught us a lot too. And then 7 years later, when we went and started making music again, even though there wasn't a lot of it, we knew what not to do in that situation. And now you're the first person hearing this, but we have some new songs we're going to put out this year. That if you ask me what songs are really kind of doing what Hidden in Plain, like the question you said, these new ones nail it.
Oh,
these new ones are, I think these new ones are some of the best things we've ever written and recorded.
That's really, I mean,
so, yeah.
Number one, I mean, new music, I'm extremely excited for. So that's awesome news. And that's interesting to hear, because I felt like another thing I wanted to mention, like on that Animal EP you guys put out, which I was going to say a few years ago, but I mean, even at this point has been 2014, you put it out? 2015. So yeah, I mean,
5 years ago.
What? So there we go. So we also have the 5th anniversary of the Animal EP. But the thing I was thinking about earlier today when I was getting ready for this is how well that EP sounds for a band who, like you said, like 7 years had not been together. And I just felt like you got on there and it's like, wow, this is really, it doesn't sound like a band, like it doesn't sound like you guys tried to rewrite your old stuff. It's not like you went in there like, well, let's rehash this. It sounds like a fresh band, and it sounds like you picked up like in a great place. So that's kind of interesting then. You would almost then, I don't know if credit's the word, but like almost a reason why Animal came out the way it did, I mean, so well, is because you kind of learned something off resolution then, kind of like what to do and what not
absolutely. To do. I think also, so Rob, when the band broke up, I got a job and went back to school. Everybody went and did their own thing. Rob continued on writing and recording and building his own studio. So he's been producing and recording crap for, I can't even tell you for how long now. And he's got where we recorded Animal, was his old studio, and that was an amazing place. Where his new studio now, where we just recorded this last EP, it's going to be an EP. It's not going to be a full length. But where we just did this last EP, he's got the best setup there is. I mean, he knows how to use it. He's just a gifted dude. So that really helped. So for one, knowing what we wanted and how we wanted to do it, and then we had somebody, with the resources and the ability to do it on in-house in the band, it was quite easy actually. It was a unique kind of situation, I think, but we're grateful for.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm excited to hear new music. And, so does that mean, do you feel like there's a lot less pressure on the band now? Like, I mean, you guys what I like about you guys is you've been fairly active, like, throughout the years. Like, you still, you release an EP, you guys play shows, you do things from time to time. Like, do you feel like now it's just kind of more fun than it used to be? Like, I'm sure a lot of those pressures that you once had are gone.
They are. It's exactly what it is. I mean, and I have a family. I don't really ever see myself ever going full time at this. Like, I don't know, like some other bands are still doing, and God bless them. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be away from my kids that long. I really like the job. I like my job. I really love my job. So I don't know. And nowadays, like, we really just enjoy getting together. Like, we just have fun. And I think that's part of the reason why this new EP is going to be reminiscent of Life and Dreaming. I don't know if sonically, in some parts of it sonically will be, but I don't know if I'm speaking from it sonically. I think that what will be reminiscent about this EP to Life and Dreaming is that it is just a culmination of songs that we wrote because we wanted to have fun and we wanted to make a better song. Like, it just, the places where we were at in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003 as we were writing songs that ended up on Life and Dreaming, is exactly what happened here. One of these songs could have been on the Animal EP. It's that old. And then the rest of them are kind of just were written through the last couple of years. So, and then one of the songs was written right before we recorded it, similar to, like the story I was telling you about Garden Statement. So I think now everybody just really wants to have fun. And I mean, to give you a little bit of an inside situation, like we have these songs and we don't even know how we're going to release them. So we're kind of in that situation where like we're labelless. We don't have a label. Do we try to find a label? Is that the best thing for us? Do we just release it and let the people who know us and still follow us and love us enjoy it? Do we even really care how many followers, quote unquote, and listeners get? Yes, I want as many people to hear this thing as possible, but like, am I going to let myself lose sleep and let it drive decisions? No, I don't want to do it that way. I don't want numbers to be what drives our decision making. We just want to put something out for people to like, maybe continue to play shows, that kind of thing.
I think that's better anyways. I think the pressure, a lot of times that ends up like hurting bands a lot. A lot of times that becomes a band's demise because of that pressure that you're talking about. It's
yeah, exactly.
And it's crazy too. Like though, you have to think like now. I mean, if we look now versus 15 years ago, and you were putting out Life and Dreaming, it's almost like, I don't know, it's good and it's bad. But like you're saying, like there's so many ways you can release music now. Like you don't really need the label, but you can have a label. You can, you know what I mean? Like there's so many other approaches. Whereas before, 15 years ago, it's kind of like you sign to a label, they put it out, you go tour and promote it. Now I feel like, I don't know, it's a lot more accessible, which is very good.
And to your listeners, if there's anyone out there who's got an idea for us and you want to reach out to us, like we're open. We know it's going to come out. We know we could do it on our own. I think that right now, we're just kind of bouncing ideas off each other to figure out what's the best way. Like, what do we do? Our own marketing campaign? Like, do we do like? It's done. It's recorded. It's mastered. It's ready to go.
Oh, nice.
It's just like, what do we do with it? How do we? Maybe I'm being 100% too candid for us. But again, for us, it's just like, when we play shows. And there's people with their hands up, throwing their fists and singing words back at us. That's ultimately who we want to hear this the most. And anybody else is just going to make us super happy, and it's going to be considered a bonus.
That's awesome. I mean, no matter how it comes out, it's. I'm sure I'm just excited to hear it. No matter how you guys end up releasing it. But I mean, besides, so you got new music. So I mean, that should be coming out sometime this year, and that is absolutely awesome. You guys have any live plans, planned right now, or no?
No. We are tossing around a couple of ideas. They were great ideas, but they were like next month, and we just don't want to go out and right now and play a show until we have new music to play with it. It's been, since 2015, we've been playing, I think, what's basically kind of the same set list. It's like, yeah, it's very Life and Dreaming heavy, and we play some of the Animal songs and some Resolution songs, and we want to give our fans and our listeners something more. We don't want to go out and kind of just like beat on the same tunes. You know what I mean? We want to get excited about something new. So we turn that part down. And just kind of keep our eyes set on like probably either early summer, late summer, or fall. That'll be when we play shows, if we play shows. But then again, it's like you said, we only want to do it if it's fun. If it's going to be pressure, if it's going to give us anxiety, we probably won't do it. If it sets up to be something fun and something cool, then yeah, you can count us in. But we don't have to, we just don't have to. We love it. We have fun when we do it. But we don't want to sacrifice, and I don't know, I guess the situation unless it's fun.
No, I get, and I like that. I mean, I also like the way that you guys approach it, because to me, that makes me want to go sit, like any time that you play around me, that makes me want to go see you, because there's a lot of bands who'll get back together. And like you were saying, it's like, they'll kind of do it and it's the same set list and stuff. But like you guys are like putting something else out there, and you're kind of like you're being active. You're not just playing off a nostalgic thing. You know, I really respect that, and I like that as a fan. Instead of just going, well, screw it, we'll go out and play, you know, just what they want to hear. We'll go play a greatest hits set every single time. So I like that. You know, I like that you guys are still doing things, and you know that it sounds like it's fun too. You know, kind of sounds like you're invigorated. So I mean, that's exciting, honestly.
I think one of the things I love, I do this. I think a lot of people probably do. We just played the last show we played. It was already last summer, but we played the Atlantic City Warped Tour, the reunion, and it was such a great show. And I'm searching around social media, searching hashtags, just trying to see what kind of cool photos came from the set. And like in every single photo, all of us are just like ear to ear, smiling. Like they're even in the serious moments of like a serious song like Bleed for You, you know, like, which is deep. We got a lot of meaningful lyrics in, and it's a heavy topic. But like, there's moments where we're just like having so much fun, and that like we're smiling ear to ear. And that was just like a reoccurring theme I saw on all the photos. And I go back and look at even photos from further back, and it's erased any of the stuff that happened maybe where we were like making bad choices earlier in our careers. You know, it's just made it such a better experience, I think, for us and for the people watching us. You can't help but get swept away when you see the band having a good time.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen you guys live once. I saw you at a Skate and Surf in 2014, and probably best set of the weekend, I would say, easily. I mean, it's kind of like you're talking about. You guys, part of it was you guys seemed to be enjoying yourselves, like up there. It's like it seemed like you were into it, and everyone in the crowd was into it too. You know, I mean, it's that mutual thing where I feel like you're both feeding off each other. And I mean, as a audience member, I can tell you that people can tell that. You know what I mean? Like watching it from up there, you can tell that you're enjoying it, and I think that's part of why you guys are good. I mean, you guys are solid live, but you know.
Thank you.
As we close this out, you know, I've had so much fun talking. I mean, life in general, like I said, one of my favorite and not even just Drive Thru, I mean, one of my favorite records. It's just such a great record. Crazy to believe it's 15 years old. But, I mean, looking into the future, I know me personally, and I'm sure anyone listening to this is extremely stoked to hear that there's new music coming. And, you know, where can people find Hidden in Plain View online? Where can, people find you guys on there?
I mean, I think Facebook, Instagram, they're our two most active socials if you're looking for just kind of updates and like simple content. Twitter, I'm the one that runs the Twitter, so I'm not usually super active on there, but you know, and I check it. If anyone wants to reach out to me directly, you can go right to our Twitter. HIPV NJ, I think is the handle. But I mean, otherwise, I don't know, man. We're not really out there, you know. And that's another funny thing about our band. When we did break up, it was still the MySpace era. It was like 2000, early 2007, on the end of 2006. So nobody even had Facebook yet. The band never got a Facebook.
Wow,
we didn't start our Facebook until we didn't have any of that stuff until way after the fact. So anybody who's following us on those socials searched us after, you know, or came after a recent show. So it wasn't like, it's crazy if you look at our followers compared to bands, you know, from our same time period. It's like, what? How does Hidden in Plain View only have? Well, it's because we just missed the first 6 years of Facebook and Instagram. But yeah, no, I mean, we're there, we're active. I mean, I think that what's cool about where we are now is that, you know, you can reach us. And it's like you reaching out to me, if you contact us on socials, you're going to get one of the band members in responding to you. So take that for whatever it's worth. I think it's pretty cool.
I think it's very cool too. I've always loved talking to you guys. Everyone I've ever talked to in the band, you're all very, very rad. So yeah, anyone should reach out and hit them up. And I mean, even anyone listening, whether you've been a fan and you've been listening to, you know, Life and Dream for 15 years, or maybe it's new to you, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's still people out there discovering you guys. I mean, really, even me, I heard Life and Dreaming 7 years, 2012, however long ago that was. I can't do the math in my head, but like, you know, people are still discovering it so much later. So, I do think that's the nice thing of the internet. That is the one nice thing. While there are setbacks, I think, for bands, I think that's one of the cool things. People can still discover you this later on. But right now, we're going to play some songs off Life and Dreaming, and we're going to kick it off right now with one of my favorites off the record. We've been talking about it quite a bit today, and it is an American classic opening up this block of music on the Power Chord Hour. Right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast, that was a band well worth skipping your college graduation for. That was Hidden in Plain View with Ashes to Ashes. Before that was Hidden in Plain View with 20 Below. Before that, there they were with Garden Statement. And opening up that block of music was Hidden in Plain View with American Classic. And all those come off their classic record, Life and Dreaming, which turns 15 this year, or just turned 15 a few weeks before we did this interview. And a very happy anniversary to the album, and I can't thank Joe enough for doing that interview. If you couldn't tell during it, I mean, I love that record. So being able to dissect it like that and really get to talk about it was just absolutely fun. And we're definitely going to have Joe on again. I mean, I am so stoked we get new music, and could not be more stoked that he announced it here on the Power Chord Hour. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. As a fan, what a cool way to find out they're putting out new music on your podcast. That's pretty rad. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited, and we'll definitely have them on again. I'll definitely have Joe on again when the record comes out, and we'll definitely be playing those songs once they come out. So do not worry. When the EP does come out, you will know about it because I'll tell you all about it on here. And once again, thank you so much to Joe for calling in, talking Hidden in Plain View with us, 15 years of life and dreaming. And like I said earlier on, in the beginning, it's like I hope there's people listening to this who are big Hidden in Plain View fans who get something out of it, like, I always wondered this about it or something. Hopefully you got some questions answered. But even on top of that, I would love, hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. If this is the first time hearing Hidden in Plain View, let me know if I've converted you into a fan. That's the stuff I always love to hear about. Is let me know, because I discovered them, I don't know, 6-7 years ago at this point. So it's there's still people hearing them. Even though the album's been out for 15 years, I would love to hear if this was your first time hearing them, because that would be absolutely amazing. Let's keep turning people onto this band, including now they're putting more music out. I also love that approach. We talked about it in there, but I really do appreciate that they don't just go, because really the truth is, if Hidden in Plain View wanted to, they could just go play a couple shows every year, play the same set list, and that would be it. People would show up to the shows. People would gladly pay the ticket price. But it's he talked about it. It's no, they want to put out new music before they play again. They want to keep going. They don't just want to be a nostalgic act. A nostalgia act, which I really appreciate, because, and there's nothing even wrong with that. There's certain bands who come back and do that, and, that's totally cool. I go see them too. But the ones I really like and the ones I appreciate are the ones who go, we haven't been a band in 7 or 8 years. Let's do it again. Let's write new music. Let's do more than just rely on our past successes. Let's keep this going, no matter how they do it, even if it's not full time. It's I really do appreciate as a fan that they care enough, they give a shit enough to go, let's put out new music, let's make sure when we play shows that we want to play them and that we're having fun, not just, hey, this festival is offering us this amount of money, let's go do it. It's not like that. And I really appreciate hearing that. He sounded very sincere talking about that. So, I feel like as a fan, I really appreciate that and knowing that about them. But I'm very happy with this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune back in next week. Probably no guest next week, but we will have another one for you very, very soon. I'm talking to a few different people, which I'm very stoked about having on. More people who I go just a lot more of I have a couple guys I'm hitting up right now, and we're kind of scheduling things, but kind of in the same vein as Joe, where, from bands that I've been listening to now for well over a decade. And, it's just kind of surreal to be oh, yeah, they'll come on my show and, we can talk to them, about those records and stuff. So we should have some neat stuff coming up, but check back in next week, because either way, guest or no guest, I am here with you with another episode of the Power Chord Hour podcast. And also check out the Power Chord Hour radio show that airs every Friday night at 10 Eastern on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York. And if you do not live in Jamestown, do not fear. You can listen to that show from anywhere in the world, and I mean anywhere in the world. I no longer produce it, but years ago, and the show is still going on, I just no longer the producer. But the Swedish Hour, which is like the longest running show on 107.9 WRFA, I remember when I used to produce it years ago, we had listeners in Sweden. So, no matter where you are, there's no excuse. If you want some great punk and alternative every Friday night at 10 Eastern, check us out. And you can do so if you're not in the Jamestown area, where you can stream the radio station right on the website at WRFALP.com. And also, we have an iPhone app. We don't have one for Android yet, but there's an iPhone app that you can listen to the station on. It's not just my show, but you just listen to the station anytime you want from wherever you are. We play some good stuff on there. I mean, not just my show. Like, we play stuff you're not going to hear on other stations. So, I mean, if you want to check that out, also check out the WRFA mobile app in the iTunes store. And like I said, WRFALP.com. But check us out every Friday night. It is different from this. I play a lot more music on there. I still talk to you and let you know about what's going on, but that's a lot more music heavy. So I spin you a lot more music on there, talk to you more on here. But check that out and stay connected with the show. We're at Power Chord Hour, no longer Power Chord Radio. We had that handle for a while. Not even for a while, like 4 years. So a little longer than a while, almost half a decade. But I finally got our handles to Power Chord Hour. I believe I don't know how it works. Someone had them in the beginning. There's a reason why we did Power Chord Radio. But I do realize that that's sometimes confusing to people because the show's called Power Chord Hour. Then you look it up and it was Power Chord Radio. But I fixed all that. We're Power Chord Hour everywhere online. So you can search Power Chord Hour. You'll find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, Spotify. And on Spotify, every week I put up playlists of what I play on the radio show so you can see what I play on there. And also do special ones. Like right now I'm doing my favorite songs of the last decade. So we're up to 2018 now. And you can go check those out on our Spotify playlist. All that good stuff, and powerchordhour@gmail.com, because I do have some Power Chord Hour pins that I want to send out. So hit me up on there. I'll send you some free Power Chord Hour pins. One of them is a Cheshire Cat ripoff of the Blink-182 album Cheshire Cat. So like I always tell people, I mean, I was going to say even if you don't like the show, but I guess if you're listening to this point, you probably at least... You don't hate the show. Let's say that. Let's agree on that. I won't say we're your favorite show ever, but let's both agree if you're still listening, you at least tolerate the show. So, help support us. Some Power Chord Hour pins, totally free. Hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. But that is going to be the podcast for this week. I love it. I love having guests on here. Always super happy. So, I'm doing this just after I interviewed him. I'm recording this. So, I just talked to him about an hour or so ago, and I'm still really, really stoked on the interview, right now. When an interview goes well, you feel it the rest of the day. I don't know if other people get like that, but for me, if an interview goes really well, you're kind of stoked the rest of the day. You're like, oh yeah, that was awesome. So thankfully this was a good one. It went well, and I hope you enjoyed it. But until next week, in next week's episode for the Power Chord Hour, I'm Anthony Merchant, and thanks for listening.